The woman has not spoken a single word in 31 years. Not to her husband, not to her children, not to doctors or therapists or anyone who tried to help. 31 years of silence. Absolute, complete, unbroken. Until today, she sits on Oprah's stage with her hands folded in her lap. Her name is Helen Carter. She is 58 years old. Her husband sits beside her. That he's been speaking for her for 3 decades. He has been her voice to the world. But today, something is different. Today, Helen is holding a small object in her hands, that a cassette tape. Old, worn, the label faded beyond reading. She holds it like it contains her soul, because in a way it does. The story begins normally enough. Oprah introduces the segment. Today we are exploring the mystery of selective mutism in adults. Our guest Helen Carter has not spoken since 1993. Her husband Robert has been her voice, her translator, her bridge to the world. They are here to share their extraordinary story. The audience applauds politely. Robert begins to tell the story. He speaks about the morning Helen stopped talking, that he speaks about the years of therapy, that he speaks about learning to communicate through writing, through gestures, through the silent language they developed together, that it is touching, that it is moving, that it is exactly what everyone expected. And then something happens that no one expected. Helen raises her hand. She touches Robert's arm. She shakes her head, and she opens her mouth. For the first time in 31 years, she speaks one word, barely a whisper, cracked from 3 decades of disuse, but unmistakable. No, the studio goes completely silent. Robert freezes. His face transforms from confusion to shock to something that looks like fear. Oprah leans forward. Helen, she says gently. Did you just speak? Helen nods slowly. Her throat works. Her lips move, and another word comes out. Truth. Her voice is rough, broken, like an instrument that has not been played in decades. But it is a voice. Her voice. The voice everyone thought was gone forever, that I need, Helen says. Each word an effort. Each syllable a mountain to climb. To tell the truth. She looks at Robert, and the look at her eyes makes Oprah's blood run cold. Not love. Not gratitude. Fear. How do we get here? Rewind 117 minutes. The morning had begun with careful preparation. Today's show was supposed to be about love, about the extraordinary lengths spouses go to for each other, about couples who faced impossible challenges and came through stronger. Robert and Helen Carter were supposed to be the centerpiece, a heartwarming story, a husband who had dedicated his life to being his wife's voice, that a love that transcended the need for words. The production team had done their research. They had spoken with Robert extensively. They had received written responses from Helen, always filtered through Robert. They had verified the medical history. Everything checked out. Helen had stopped speaking in 1993 after what Robert described as a severe psychological trauma. The exact nature of the trauma was never disclosed. Private, Robert had said, too painful to discuss. The therapist supported this story. The medical records confirmed selective mutism. Everything seemed legitimate, but the production team had not spoken to Helen alone. They had never been able to. Robert was always there, always translating, always speaking for her. They had assumed this was normal. They had assumed this was love. They were wrong. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Helen sat in the green room for 2 hours before the show. Robert sat beside her. He held her hand. He spoke to the production assistants on her behalf. He answered every question with practiced ease. But something was different today. Helen kept glancing at her purse, the cassette tape hidden inside. The tape she had found 3 weeks ago. Hidden in a box in the attic, a box Robert did not know she had discovered, a tape that changed everything. For 31 years, Helen had believed something Robert had told her, something that had convinced her that speaking was dangerous, that speaking would destroy everything, that silence was the only safe option. But 3 weeks ago, she had found the tape, and she had listened to it on an old Walkman she bought at a thrift store. And she had heard something that shattered the prison she had been living in. She had heard the truth, and today, she was going to share it. When Robert began telling his version of the story on stage, Helen felt something shift inside her. Something that had been frozen for 31 years began to thaw. The fear was still there, but beneath it was something stronger. Rage. 31 years of stolen voice, 31 years of isolation. 31 years of being controlled by someone who claimed to love her, and no more. She raised her hand. She touched his arm. She shook her head. And she spoke. Behind the scenes, Oprah made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. She did not try to smooth things over. She did not move to commercial. She did not protect the planned narrative. Instead, she leaned in. "Helen," she said gently, "take your time. Tell us what you need to tell us." That Helen's eyes were wet. Her hands were shaking. But her voice, though rough, was growing stronger with each word. "He told me," she said, "that if I ever spoke again, people would die. He told me I was dangerous, that my voice had power I could not control, that the only way to keep everyone safe was to stay silent forever." She looked at Robert. He was pale now, sweating. His hands gripped the arms of his chair. "That I believed him," Helen continued. "For 31 years, I believed every word. I thought I was protecting people. I thought my silence was sacrifice. I thought he was the only one who could translate for me because he was the only one who understood." She reached in her purse. She pulled out the cassette tape. "But 3 weeks ago," she said, "I found this, hidden in our attic, in a box I was never supposed to open." She held up the tape. "This is a recording of a therapy session for 1993, she said. "A session I do not remember. A session that happened right before I stopped speaking." She looked at Robert. He was no longer pale. He was gray. "Oh, you want to tell them what is on this tape?" Helen asked. "Or should I?" Robert's mouth opened. An "oh" sound came out. And for the first time in 31 years, Helen smiled. "Then I will," she said. This is the moment no one in the studio and no one watching at home ever saw coming. Helen's voice was steady now, stronger, like a muscle remembering how to work. "In 1993, she said, I was a singer, not famous, but good. I had a voice that people noticed. I was starting to get attention. I was starting to build something." She paused. Robert did not like that. She continued. "He wanted me home. He wanted me silent. He wanted me dependent on him." She looked at the tape in her hands. "I was in therapy because I was trying to find the courage to leave him," she said. "I was working with a therapist to build my confidence, to find my voice in more ways than one." She shook her head. "Robert found out. He came to a session without telling me. He convinced the therapist to let him join. And during that session, he did something I did not remember until I heard this tape." She held it up. "He used hypnosis," she said. "He was trained in it. He used it on me. He planted suggestions so deep I could not fight them. He made me believe that my voice was dangerous, that speaking would hurt people, that silence was the only safe path, that Oprah's face was a mask of controlled fury." "And he recorded it?" she asked. Helen nodded. "He recorded it as insurance," she said, "in case the hypnosis ever wore off, in case he needed to reinforce it. He never thought I would find it. He never thought I would listen to it. He never thought I would understand." She looked at Robert. He was frozen, unable to speak, unable to move. The irony was not lost on anyone that I heard my own voice on that tape, Helen said, singing, laughing, speaking freely. And then I heard him, telling me that my voice was a weapon, that speaking would cause car accidents, that my words would kill children, that the only way to protect everyone was to never speak again. She was crying now, and I believed him. For 31 years, I believed that my voice was deadly. I lived in a prison of silence because the man who was supposed to love me convinced me that speaking would kill people. She stood up. She faced Robert. "You stole 31 years from me," she said. 31 years of singing. 31 years of talking to my children. 31 years of having a voice in my own life. Her voice rose. "That I missed my daughter's wedding because I could not say the toast. I missed my son's graduation because I could not call his name. I missed every conversation, every joke, every whispered goodnight for 3 decades." She was shouting now, her voice raw but powerful. "Because you wanted control. Because you wanted me dependent. Because you could not stand the thought of me being something without you." She held up the tape. "But I found your insurance," she said. "Your evidence. Your confession. And today, the whole world is going to hear it. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Oprah stood. She approached Helen. She took her hand. "Helen," she said, "you do not have to play that tape if you do not want to. You have already told us enough. We believe you." Helen shook her head. "Oh," she said, "I need to play it. Not for you. Not for the audience. For me. I need to hear my own voice from before. I need to remember who I was." Oprah nodded. She gestured to the production team. They found an old tape player. They brought it to the stage. Helen inserted the cassette. She pressed play. The studio filled with sound, static first, then voices that a therapist asking questions. Robert's voice, calm and measured, and then Helen's voice, young, clear, full of life, singing a snippet of a song. Laughing at something the therapist said, describing her dreams for her music career. The audience heard a woman they did not recognize, vibrant, confident, alive, and then Robert's voice changed. "Helen, you are feeling very relaxed, very safe. You are listening only to my voice. Only my voice matters." The room went cold. They heard him plant the suggestions. "Your voice is dangerous. You have the power to hurt people. If you speak, people will die. Car accidents, fires, violence. All because of your voice." They heard Helen's voice change, become distant, confused, afraid. The only way to protect everyone is silence. Complete silence. Forever. You will not speak. You cannot speak. Speaking means death. And then silence. The tape ended. The studio was absolutely still. Robert sat in his chair. He had not moved. He had not spoken. He looked like a man watching his entire life collapse. Oprah turned to him. "What do you have to say for yourself?" she asked. Robert's mouth opened, then closed. He had no words. The man who had been Helen's voice for 31 years had nothing to say. Security was called. Robert was escorted from the building. Police were waiting outside. Helen had already contacted them. She had already filed charges. This was not just a revelation that it was an arrest. But before Robert was taken away, Helen stopped the security guards. She walked to her husband, her soon-to-be ex-husband. She looked him in the eyes, and she sang a single note, clear, pure, strong. A note she had not sung in 31 years, a note that proved her voice had never been dangerous, a note that proved she was free. Robert flinched like he had been struck. And then he was gone. The episode that aired was unlike anything in television history. It was not just entertainment, it was evidence. The tape recording was used in court. Robert was convicted of psychological abuse and unlawful imprisonment. He was sentenced to 15 years. But the real story was Helen's recovery. In the months following the episode, her voice returned fully. She began singing again. Not professionally at first. Just for herself. I in the shower, I in the kitchen, I in the garden. Relearning the instrument that had been taken from her. Her children, now adults, heard their mother's voice for the first time they could remember. They heard her say their names. They heard her laugh. They heard her say, "I love you," to 31 years of silence. Broken by truth, Helen started a foundation. She called it the Voice Reclaimed. It helps victims of psychological abuse and coercive control. It provides therapy, legal support, and community. But more than that, it provides witness. It tells people that what happened to them was real, that they are not crazy, that they are not alone. The foundation has helped over 7,000 people in its first 3 years. 7,000 voices reclaimed, 7,000 stories told, 7,000 prisons broken open. Helen speaks at events now. She tells her story. She uses the voice that was stolen from her for 31 years. She sings sometimes, nothing fancy, just simple songs, but every note is a victory. Every word is a rebellion. Every sound is proof that she survived. Oprah stays in touch with Helen. They talk on the phone sometimes, just to talk, just to hear Helen's voice, just to celebrate the miracle of ordinary conversation. Oprah has said that Helen's episode changed her understanding of abuse. "I thought I knew what abuse looked like," she said. "I thought I had seen it all, but I had never seen this. I had never seen someone's voice literally taken from them. Not through violence, through manipulation, through the cruelest kind of love." She pauses when she tells this story. Helen taught me that the most dangerous prisons have no bars, she says. They are made of belief, of fear, of trust that has been twisted into chains. And the only key is truth. There is one final detail that most people do not know. When Helen played that tape on stage, something fell out of the cassette case that a small piece of paper that folded to hidden IT was a note from Robert to himself. Dated 1993 that IT said, insurance policy. Play for Helen if programming fades. Reinforce every 5 years. She must never speak again. If she speaks, she leaves. If she leaves, I am nothing. Helen found that note after the show. She read it once. Then she burned it. She did not need it. She had already proven everything it contained, but she kept the ashes. She scattered them in her garden, where she sings now. Every morning, as the sun rises loud, free, alive, the ashes of her prison feeding the soil, the voice of her freedom filling the air. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story like this. Because there are more voices waiting to be freed, more truths waiting to be told, more prisons waiting to be broken. And somewhere out there, someone is living in silence. Not by choice, by control, by fear, by lies. They have been told so many times they believe them. If that is you, hear this. Your voice is not dangerous. Your words are not weapons. Your silence is not protecting anyone. IT is only protecting the person who put you there. Speak, even if it is just a whisper, even if it cracks, even if it has been years. Speak, because your voice is yours. And no one has the right to take it. Not for a day, not for a year, not for 31 years, not ever. Speak.